In 1969, the miniskirt wasn't just a piece of clothing, it was a statement on the streets of New York City. This look, complete with a chain belt, captures the confident, modern style of a generation challenging old norms. On the decks of the RMS Carpathia, survivors of the Titanic disaster stand in stunned silence, hours after being pulled from the icy Atlantic. The Carpathia's crew gave up their own blankets and quarters to care for the 705 people they rescued that morning. Amidst the final push towards Berlin in 1945, Soviet soldiers of the Red Army took a rare break from the fighting. An acrobatic duo performed for the troops, using a T-34 tank as their stage in a surreal moment of wartime entertainment. The Dallas Memorial Auditorium was packed with 10,000 screaming fans for the Beatles' only concert in the city on September 18, 1964. Police had to use a decoy ambulance to get the band to the venue safely through the massive crowds. While known for her bombshell image, actress Jane Mansfield was also a classically trained musician with a reported IQ of 163. Poses like this made her a major 1950s star, but she often felt her intelligence was overlooked by Hollywood. In May 1975, President Gerald Ford made a controversial visit to Madrid, shaking hands with Spanish dictator Francisco Franco. The trip was meant to strengthen ties with a Cold War ally, but drew heavy criticism back home just months before Franco's passing. Brigadier General Theodore Roosevelt Jr., the oldest man to storm the beaches on D-Day, passed from a heart attack just over a month later. Military police here guard his temporary grave in Normandy before he was moved to lie beside his brother, who perished in WWI. A Hollywood audience in 1952 tries out the new Natural Vision 3D glasses for the premiere of the film Buona Devil. The movie itself was panned by critics, but the novelty of lions seemingly leaping off the screen made it a huge box office success. On the set of his first film, Love Me Tender, a 21-year-old Elvis Presley shares a scene with actress Deborah Paget in 1956. Elvis was famously nervous about his acting debut and was crushed when his character was written to pass away at the end. Alec Guinness, already a big star, chats with the relatively unknown Omar Sharif on the set of Lawrence of Arabia. Director David Lean had to fight to cast Sharif, who got the role after it was rejected by nearly 24 other actors. Years before she became the punk icon Blondie, a young Debbie Harry worked as a waitress at the famous New York club, Max's Kansas City. She served artists like Andy Warhol and musicians from the Velvet Underground before starting her own band. In 1930, United Airlines introduced the first female flight attendants to reassure the public that flying was safe. A key requirement for these 8 women, known as the Sky Girls, was that they had to be registered nurses. This group of young men in 1980s China shows the first influences of Western fashion, from their bell-bottoms to their longer hairstyles. Such style was a subtle act of rebellion against the uniform, modest clothing of the previous generation. An iron worker in 1979 stands 1,650 feet above the streets of New York City, guiding a section of the World Trade Center's antenna into place. With no safety harness visible, these photos are a stark reminder of the guts it took to build the skyline. To escape East Berlin in 1963, Austrian Heinz Meixner removed the windshield from his tiny Austin Healey convertible. He sped towards Checkpoint Charlie, ducking his head at the last second as the car slid perfectly under the border barrier. Most audiences in the early 70s knew Susan Day as the brainy Laurie Partridge from the musical sitcom The Partridge Family. She won the role with no prior acting experience and became one of the most popular teen idols of the decade. The Mercedes-Benz W125 record wagon was engineered for the sole purpose of breaking the land speed record on a public road. Driver Rudolf Caracciola hit 268.8 miles per hour on the German Autobahn in 1938, a record that stood for nearly 80 years. Engineer Douglas Engelbart sits at the console used for his 1968 presentation, the mother of all demos. In that single session, he publicly demonstrated the computer mouse, video conferencing, and hypertext for the very first time. After her famous run as TV's Wonder Woman, Linda Carter focused on her career as a singer in the early 80s. 1980s, she signed with a major label and starred in a series of her own musical television specials on CBS. The 1979 NCAA championship game shows Larry Bird's Indiana State clashing with Magic Johnson's Michigan State. This game drew the highest television ratings in college basketball history and kicked off the famous rivalry between the two players. The Oseberg ship on display in Oslo is one of the best-preserved Viking longships ever discovered. It was found in a large burial mound containing the remains of two high-status women, confirming it was used for a ceremonial burial around 834 AD. On May 6, 1937, the German airship Hindenburg erupted into flames while attempting to land in Lakehurst, New Jersey. The massive hydrogen-filled vessel was completely destroyed in just over 30 seconds, bringing the era of passenger airships to an abrupt end. An actor in a Cyberman costume from the BBC series Doctor Who takes a smoke break between appearances. The specific design of the helmet and chest unit places this photograph in the early 1980s. A young Linda Carter is seen here before she landed her famous role as TV's Wonder Woman. Her career got a major boost in 1972 when she won the Miss World USA pageant, which led to her first acting classes and auditions. The French airship Le Jaune, the yellow one, is seen flying past the Eiffel Tower shortly after the turn of the 20th century. Its numerous successful flights over Paris helped prove the viability of steerable, powered air travel years before airplanes were common. A woman navigates the streets of New York City on a Vespa scooter in this photo from the late 1960s. These Italian scooters became a stylish and affordable mode of transportation in American cities after World War II. Construction on the Eiffel Tower is seen here well underway in 1888, a year before it would open for the World's Fair. Despite its eventual popularity, many of Paris's leading artists protested its construction, calling it a useless and monstrous tower. Workers at a Ford plant assembled the Model T on the company's revolutionary moving assembly line. This process, perfected in the mid-1910s, cut car assembly time from over 12 hours down to just 93 minutes. To beat the summer heat in the 1960s, New York City deployed mobile swimming pools to neighborhoods without public pools. These swimmobiles were part of the Police Athletic League's program to give city kids a safe place to cool off. The top photo shows Sydney's Harbor Bridge in 1932, the year it opened, towering over a much smaller city. The bottom photo highlights the city's famous Opera House, a building that wouldn't begin construction for another 27 years. Without modern safety harnesses, workers in the 1930s balanced precariously to perform maintenance on the large clock of the Daily Telegraph building on London's Fleet Street. To capture the scale of the 1963 March on Washington, a photographer shot from behind the Lincoln Memorial, creating the powerful illusion that Lincoln himself was watching Martin Luther King Jr.'s speech. From the deck of a boat on July 16, 1969, astronaut Neil Armstrong's wife Janet and their two sons quietly watched the launch of Apollo 11. While the world saw a historic event, they saw their husband and father heading to the moon. Actress Audrey Hepburn poses playfully on a ping-pong table in the south of France for her then-husband, photographer Terry O'Neill. This candid, relaxed shot contrasts sharply with her carefully styled studio portraits from the era. When the famous Mocambo nightclub refused to book Ella Fitzgerald, Marilyn Monroe personally called the owner and promised to take a front table every single night. The owner agreed, and Monroe's star power helped break down a barrier for one of music's greatest singers. During the 1918 Spanish flu pandemic, public health measures were not taken lightly, as shown by this man's sign. In many American cities, failing to wear a mask in public was a crime punishable by fines or jail time. In 1987, Romanian engineers cut a 7,600-ton apartment building in half and slid it 180 feet to create a new boulevard. The residents were reportedly left inside during the entire 6-hour procedure, with one woman placing a glass of water on her windowsill that didn't spill. While filming the 1968 western Shalako, Sean Connery and French star Brigitte Bardot posed for this famous publicity shot. The film brought together two of the biggest biggest international stars of the decade, but it ultimately failed at the box office. Hollywood power couple Tony Curtis and Janet Leigh are seen here in a rare casual moment during the 1950s. They were the parents of actress Jamie Lee Curtis, who was born just a few years after this photo was likely taken. On January 1st, 1976, art student Danny Finegood used dark fabric to alter the iconic Hollywood sign. The Hollyweed prank was done to celebrate a new California state law that relaxed marijuana penalties. To test the durability of women's footwear, the National Bureau of Standards developed this walking machine in 1945. It was designed to mechanically simulate the stresses of a 200-pound woman walking at a brisk pace. A stark billboard stood outside Oak Ridge, Tennessee, the secret city built for the Manhattan Project. This sign was a constant, serious reminder to the tens of thousands of workers that any leak of information could have severe consequences. After Michael Jackson debuted the moonwalk on television in 1983, he received a phone call from his childhood idol, Fred Astaire. The legendary dancer, then 84 years old, told Jackson, "You're a hell of a mover." In the late 19th century, horse-drawn double-decker omnibuses were a common form of public transit in Paris. The sight of them crossing the bridge in front of Notre Dame captures a city on the verge of the automotive age. Pan Am's Boeing 377 Stratocruiser, seen here taxiing over a highway, was the pinnacle of air luxury in the 1950s, with its lounges and sleeping berths. However, its four massive propeller engines were notoriously unreliable, causing frequent delays and high operating costs. A young Ronald Reagan, years before his move to the White House, poses for a publicity still for the 1949 comedy, The Girl from Jones Beach. He's pictured here with his co-stars Virginia Mayo, Eddie Bracken, and Donna Drake. Philips marketed this combination refrigerator in 1956, featuring a radio built right into the door. It was an attempt to merge two popular household items, though the novelty of a musical kitchen appliance didn't become a widespread trend. Hollywood legend Debbie Reynolds poses with her daughter, Carrie Fisher, in this 1973 photograph. Just 4 years later, Carrie would achieve her own massive fame as Princess Leia in Star Wars. An employee at the EMI pressing plant in London performs a quality control check in 1965, surrounded by stacks of fresh vinyl. The album being inspected is the Beatles' Rubber Soul, a record that marked a major step forward in the band's sound. Women's liberation activists protest the Miss America pageant on the Atlantic City Boardwalk in 1968. The event gained national attention after demonstrators threw items like girdles and high heels into a freedom trash can to oppose the pageant's beauty standards.